Making his debut in 1991, Paul Tracy became one of the more formidable drivers in IndyCar. He would win 13 races from 1991 to 1997 and finished third in points in 1993 and 1994. However, Tracy's relationship with Team Penske was not the greatest. In 1995, the team cut back to 2 cars, causing Tracy to move over to Newman Haas Racing, where he got wins at Surfers Paradise and Milwaukee. As a result, for 1996, Emerson Fittipaldi was moved over to the affiliate Hogan Penske Racing as Tracy returned to the main team. The following year, he would get wins at Nazareth, Rio de Janeiro, and Gateway. Despite this, Tracy went from the frequent points leader to being 5th in points at the end of the year. This came after he failed to finish each of the final 5 races of the season. The two sides would split once again. Tracy would join Team Green for the 1998 season, where he partnered sophomore driver Dario Franchitti. Tracy joined the team with the expectation of being the number 1 driver.
We have a yellow flag. A slow car on the backstretch, unofficially looking around. I don't see anyone stopped. Now we're hearing that a car touched the wall. We're not sure who it is yet.
It's right there. Paul Tracy's moving around a little bit. Now, I don't know whether he was doing that inside the car. What'll be curious is we've gone to lap 74 as well, whether they're going to all take a stop here under the yellow, because we've got such a fast green pace. Oh, I'd say he's up against the wall. What do you think,
yes.
Robbie? That's a little further up against the wall than just out of the gray. He didn't just brush it. He ran all the way along it. You can see up there at the top of your screen. Sorry, we moved off to that picture a little quick, but there was a black mark all the way around the top of the screen.
So now there will be some semi-frantic radio transmissions from car to crew and back as they try to take a close look at whether Paul Tracy suffered damage as he scraped the wall.
He might have been wiggling that car on purpose just to feel if anything was out of line there, or that could have possibly been that the car was moving. But I think probably Paul was doing it himself. Wouldn't you think, Robbie?
I would think so. I think after touching the wall like that, even on warm-up laps, you would shake the car back and forth to make sure you don't have a punctured tire or a broken wheel.
Down to Gary Gerald with Paul Tracy.
Paul Tracy on the wall. Paul, what was the situation and where did the contact come from? My car got really, really loose, the cool car, and I just was having to run a really high line to stop it, try to minimize the amount of car was stepping out, and I was on the outside of a lap car, and I just got up on the gray a little bit and lost the front end and went and just brushed the walls. My mistake. I'm really disappointed. I mean, we've been behind the 8 ball all weekend, and I just wish we could have ended up better than this. Tough not getting any points in the first race.
Well, it really is. I mean, I'm really disappointed in what's happened today. My mistake out on the racetrack. Hopefully we can make it up in Japan.
Thank you.
Oh, Christian Fittipaldi is in the tires.
And there's another one of the cool cars right up here in the top part of your screen.
Can't tell from this angle who it is. Either Dario Franchitti or Paul Tracy, and it is Paul Tracy, it appears, as he climbs out. And once again, we'll get yellow flags from the flag stand as the kart safety team goes to work. Here's another look.
Oh, look at this. Whoa. Big air. That was the same location that Christian Fittipaldi was involved with Greg Moore a while back. They touched that same area. It comes to turn 6 at the end of the straightaway.
Down to Gary Gerald.
Well, an interested observer is Paul Tracy, who's watching a monitor. You had your own adventure. Everybody's having an adventure. Tell us about your ride, because you almost went over.
Well, the cool car was running great. I mean, we were just pacing ourselves. I got slowed down a little bit coming off the turn on the back straight, and Christian made a move on the outside of me and put the squeeze on me, and I had nowhere to go. I was up against the wall and just sent the car up in the air, flying in the air, and it was just a bad position to try to make a move around the outside. That's why everybody's crashing into each other.
Is this unusual? I mean, it seems like we're just having almost a demo derby out here.
Well, it's getting awfully competitive out there, and it's early in the year, so you know, it's all I can hope for is some guys drop out or have problems so we can stay up in the points.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Into the tire wall.
And that is one of the cool cars there, and it looks like possibly is
Walter
that Walter
Salas, I believe, yes.
in the blue car.
Let's take another look. Tracy and
No, that's
Ferran
Gilles
right there.
Ferran going down the inside of Paul Tracy. That's Gilles Ferran.
Front to rear contact, and they slide up this very slippery turn one into that state-of-the-art tire wall. It's wrapped with a belt of rubber like a conveyor belt. It was introduced here last year. The kart safety team is on the site. Paul Tracy has made his way back to the pit lane from the accident scene. He's with Gary Gerald.
Making the long walk back is Paul Tracy. And Paul, when you tangle up with a Brazilian, this crowd gets a little angry, and they're very boisterous, to say the least.
Crowd's pretty rough here. It's disappointing for the cool team. The car was perfect. I was just pacing myself, trying to get the mileage that I wanted, and you know, Gilles I came down the inside, but there was no way to get by, and just drove into the side of me. So it's,
Did you ever see him? Did you know he was there down on the inside?
well, I knew he was behind me, but I didn't think he was close enough to make a move. And you know, he hit my back wheel going in, and then we hit again in the middle of the turn. So it was disappointing, but you know, it's a tough race down here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
After 5 races, Tracy had a best finish of 5th place at both Motegi and Nazareth and was ranked 10th place in the standings.
Got a crash. One of the cool Reynards. And look, right there, up there with him is the other cool Reynard, spun in avoidance. Could both of Barry Green's cars have been involved in this incident? There's one up against the wall and heavily damaged at the right front corner. Driver moving around. What he's undoing is he's unbuckling his helmet from his radio connection to the pit, so he's getting out of the car. He's got no more communication to his pit crew. That is Dario Franchitti. Now in this replay, Franchitti has already spun at the upper left. You saw Paul Tracy going around, and look at the action down below. There is Hearn, who apparently collided with Carpentier. Right, and Carpentier took his left rear wheel. You see that's gone right there. He's taken that off when they made that contact. That scrambled the order. Paul Tracy also pitted, and it looks like his car is going to be taken behind the wall. See right in there, that's Dario Franchitti. Then everybody back here is trying to scramble around, make sure they don't get involved in it. Now we'll see right here, here's the other one. Looks like Paul Tracy right there. His nose is all messed up. Get down to John Kernan.
And I'm standing by with one of the drivers, very disappointed after this early mishap. Paul Tracy, what happened?
I didn't really see what happened up front. There was just a bunch of cars spinning and slowing down to avoid the accident. I got hit from behind and pushed into the car in front of me, and I got hit in the side, and just disappointing for the whole cool team. I saw that Dario was out as well, so frustrating day. I mean, the car was really good this morning. It's a long race, 300 miles, and to go out on that first lap is a huge disappointment.
That seems like this is the type of luck you're having this year.
It's frustrating. We've had a lot of bad luck, and it just seems to be continuing, and it's a bad day for the whole Team Cool Green.
Sorry to see you sideline, Paul. Let's go up pit road to Jan Bikus, who's with another driver who was involved in this.
Time to go racing. Herda, a bit of a sloppy start.
Very sloppy, but Dario Franchitti, they all slotted into place. He's going to take a look. Brian Herda says no.
Christian Fittipaldi took a look at the inside. Oh, one of the players' cars bounds across the concrete. Christian Fittipaldi on the left, and Paul Tracy in the green and white cool car also nosed into this schmozzle. We have a yellow flag immediately. Max Pappas goes to the end of the chicane. There is Robbie Gordon. To the left, we saw the defending race champion, Mark Blundell. Oh, this is Michael Andretti is also in the middle of all of this.
Okay, now you see in the back here, look at Greg Moore. He went sideways trying to get around a slower car. He's gathered it back up, but Christian Fittipaldi right there had to slow. They all come down and bunch up. Now watch Greg Moore in there. He goes across the grass, across a car. Bobby Rahal right in there. Michael Andretti there. And Christian Fittipaldi. Everybody has to take avoiding action. Got cars off in here, off in the sand trap. Look at that.
6 cars involved
Somebody. Okay, here we are at real speed. Look up here. Greg Moore dove out there. Christian locks up. Greg goes right across the curb. I don't have any idea what he was doing there, but that was very much his fault. Poor Paul Tracy right there. Comes in, has nowhere to go, runs right into the back of Greg Moore.
Down to Jackaroo.
Well, Paul Tracy, this was precisely what you alluded to and what you were worried about after your penalty.
Well, these are the things that you get caught up in when you have to start at the back, but you know, I really couldn't see what happened. All I know is when I got to the first corner, there was cars in the air, and I basically got swept out by the other cars, and was committed to where I was at on the track, and you know, there was an accident right there, so really had nowhere to go. So it's disappointing for the Cool team, because we had a great car today and had a great car all weekend. It's shown in how Dario's run. We haven't had a chance to run, so you know, hopefully he can hold down the fort for us and get a win.
Let's go back for a moment to the letter that you sent out to the kart community and brought up this point about an even-handed distribution of rules and regulations. What do you think about this situation?
Well, like I said, I didn't see what happened, but it's obviously somebody's fault because there was cars in the air, so I'd like to see if something gets done about it. I'd be frustrated.
Bob?
All right, thanks, Jack. 5th DNF of the year for Paul Tracy.
But they're all due to contact that he's had with other cars.
Oh, and we've got a car in the tire wall down in turn number 8.
Oh, is this a blessing for Michael Andretti? That's Paul Tracy.
And you should have seen the smile that crossed the face of Ed Nathman and Peter Gibbons when they realized what had happened. They thought maybe it'd be yellow and they could conserve some of that fuel, but the smile was only fleeting as we're still green.
That's a double hit for Team Cool Green. Not only have one car into the barriers, it also Franchitti is losing a little bit of his edge.
It is not a full course caution. It is only a local yellow. So the drivers, when they are past Paul Tracy's stranded car, will be back up to racing speeds as you watch Michael Andretti.
Following 12 races, Tracy had dropped to 13th in points. He only had 5 top 10 finishes to this point. Meanwhile, Franchitti was ranked 8th, with a best finish of 2nd at Long Beach.
Well, around this place, you've really got to pay attention to those mirrors and get out of the way when the leaders come, especially when you've already spun off and you've dropped down quite a bit.
Our television cameras make it look a good bit lighter than it actually is.
And look at this, Paul Tracy, and they touch. Dario Franchitti and Paul Tracy touch. His left rear of Dario Franchitti hit Paul Tracy's front, and look, he's done. His left front is toast. He must have bumped the wall. Look at that. He's got to be so upset right there. It's over, Paul. You can drive that one right to the pits and get out and go home.
There's wife Lisa, crestfallen. That incident took place right under Tommy Kendall's position.
Paul'd been trying the inside before. Right before that last yellow, he locked up and almost slid into the back of Dario, but got it stopped. Dario went clear. There he was actually up alongside a little ways, not very far. Hit Dario, obviously was trying to get away from him, and it kind of spun himself into the inside wall.
Now the question is, what is the status of that car for Dario Franchitti?
Well, the gap that he's got to the next car on the track, I don't think it affected his at all. And Paul's damage came from the contact and then him bumping the inside wall. See, they touched there, but then Paul slides in, taps the concrete wall right there in front of our own Tommy Kendall.
There you see Tracy's car.
Hey guys, there's an altercation down here. There's a fight that has broken out between Barry Green and Paul Tracy. They got into a huge argument. Some words were exchanged. Paul Tracy unhappy, and a very tense moment down here for Team Cool Green.
There's Paul Tracy exiting the back of the Team Cool Green pits. Barry Green is his car owner.
That is not the guy you want to be having an altercation with, is the guy that writes your check and does the hiring and firing. Paul clearly upset there.
And Barry Green no less so. Now, no doubt it was over whether or not Paul Tracy should have made that move on his teammate for the race lead. Keep in mind, Paul Tracy came into this team as the #1 driver. Dario Franchitti was the younger member of the team with only 1 full season under his belt. And yet Franchitti outperformed his teammate, the more experienced man, on several occasions and won 2 races, while Paul has won this year. To Jan Bikas.
Well, to tell you exactly what transpired here in the Team Cool green pits is that Paul Tracy got out of the car. The PR people came to us immediately and wanted us to stay away from Paul because they knew he was going to be upset. He walked up to Barry Green calmly to talk about it, and then all of a sudden, Paul Tracy was infuriated and shoved his team owner, and Barry Green shoved him back, and you saw what happened after that.
Jan, I happened to see at the other end of the pits on the big screen for the racetrack, they had a camera isolated on that. Barry Green was tapping his temple as if to say, Paul, and I don't know what his exact words were, Paul, you must think. About the 3rd time he tapped his head, that's when Tracy got up very aggressively and they were nose to nose.
Well, let me tell you, you can't do this and keep having incidents time after time after time. The team, and with a sponsor like Cool and everybody, needs results. Paul has to deliver. He's been on probation. He's had a bunch of silly accidents this year, and you can't be doing that with your teammate when you're leading 1-2. And Paul got to be very careful there because his job is at stake with a guy like Barry Green and with Cool. You can't behave like that.
Well, more than that, the thing about Barry Green really stands by his drivers. He's going to tell you what he thinks behind the scenes, but earlier this year, he was very firmly behind Paul Tracy. The last guy you want to alienate is the last guy in your camp, and that has been Barry Green at times, not to mention all the other reasons you mentioned.
Well, it should be said that Barry Green has stood by Paul Tracy through all of the contretemps that fell upon him earlier in this season. Barry is an Australian and a very even-tempered man, but once he goes, he goes.
Well, and you saw right there, just it went out of your screen, that green car, that is Paul Tracy. Michael Andretti's teammate has already passed him. I think that's where it happened right there, and Paul tried to hold up, blocked Michael there. Everybody locked up. Michael lost a little ground, but made sure he got around the corner. But Christian Fittipaldi has made a pass on Paul Tracy and moved into 3rd spot.
Michael went out of his way not to hit Paul. Here's what happens. See, Paul got wide. Michael's got a big run on him.
This is exact same spot where Blundell, see Michael wave at Paul. He said, you moved over on me, and then they both lock up. Little excitement going on right there.
A little bit of lockup in an odd place there from Paul Tracy, I thought.
Well, that's not. It's a deep braking spot in there. If Paul had moved over, you've gone down the crown. If you go 2 feet past your braking spot there, we've seen a lot of people locking up all weekend long there. It's a very tricky braking spot around this course.
Michael Andretti on his way onto pit road. There is suspected possible damage on the car, and sure enough, you can see it. It is a damaged right front wing. We're checking to see if the suspension is damaged as well. They have to make a choice here now. Are they going to change the whole nose box, or will they send him out? And the decision has now been made to change the whole nose box for Michael Andretti. These guys can do this pretty quickly, but you can tell by their demeanor, they know that Michael Andretti's chances of winning this race are now long gone. Let's get down to Gary Gerald.
And we see full course yellow coming out just as Paul Tracy comes gliding into the pits. I don't know if this is going to help him or not. Routine service, watching, waiting, holding. Now Tracy is on the move.
Now, Paul Tracy came in, as you saw, after pounding across one of the chicanes as Michael Andretti makes his exit. This action taking place on lap 34, just past the halfway mark of the race.
I'd be very surprised if Paul Tracy wasn't having some sort of a brake problem. He skidded past Christian Fittipaldi and got by. Michael almost did right there. See, he's already, I think his left rear is already flat.
Yeah,
and the car's squatted down in the back. There's no weight on the front tires. He can't get the car stopped. The wing plate from Michael's wing sliced the
and you can see
tire.
how the car's all sitting down. Now watch him. See there, just on the outer side of your screen, to the right there was that tire. You could tell it was flat. It was cut. Look at it right there. It's already down. The right rear tire is already flat. It's already coming off of the wheel.
Actually, the left rear, as you saw it coming out.
Right rear in your screen.
The other left.
I'm having a lot of trouble
Right
today.
to left across your radio dial, ladies and gentlemen.
We're down under. It flips the other way when you go over that equator.
Now, there is Michael Andretti live. He made a pit stop to replace the nose. Let's take a look at what happened moments ago while he was taking his place on the racetrack behind Paul Tracy, with whom he had contact a lap or two earlier. Michael is hot.
He's pointing, and he's up next to him. Paul Tracy's looking at him saying, "You're telling me this because," you know, he's driving along with brake problems and gets run into behind.
Jan Bikas. Yes, and what he was saying on the radio, Bob, was he was asking his crew, is Paul Tracy going to get a black flag for that offense? Obviously, he was expressing his displeasure to Paul Tracy on the racetrack. At the same time, he wants to find out if there'll be more penalties for Paul Tracy.
And John, there was also problems when Andretti went by the cool pit down here. Tracy's team, many of them shaking a fist out over the wall. Emotions running high.
Well, we had a clue earlier that Paul Tracy may have been having brake problems, and so it appears to have turned out. There's Paul Tracy back in once again.
This is just a case for Tracy where they'll top off and get as much fuel in as possible so that they can ensure that he goes the rest of the way. But there may be a problem with the left rear. They're pointing at the suspension back there. One of the officials is there along with the team. They're holding, and apparently they'll go to work with the wheel wrench on the left rear. Can't see exactly what the problem is.
Tough break for the home team from Australia.
This was supposed to be just for fuel, Bob. Now he's ready to go.
Oh, and there's Paul Tracy in the Team Cool green pits. Apparently, they cannot get that car to the finish.
Lost a brake caliper in the rear. No rear brakes whatsoever, we're told, Bob.
That's consistent with what we saw, starting with that incident, even before the lap before he and Michael came together, really having a tough time getting it stopped there at the end of that straightaway at turn 9, I believe.
I can't help but watch teams putting their cars away and think, having come this distance, not to finish the race must be a bitter pill.
Of course, not as bad as the guys that have to put them on. They're all wounded and take them back.
To Gary Gerald.
Paul Tracy out of the car. Paul, the contact with Michael Andretti, is that what led to the brake problems or the rear suspension problems here?
Yeah, Michael hit me in the backside in the back straightaway, and I mean, he hit me so hard it punctured the tire and bent the rear suspension, and it severed the rear brake line. So I was driving the car after that with only front brakes, and it's there's, you know, doing 190 miles an hour down to 30-mile-an-hour corners with no rear brakes. It wasn't safe to be out there, so it was disappointing for the Cool team. I had a good car. We were just trying to make the mileage that we needed to do to finish on the podium, and
seemed like there was a lot of finger pointing going on here on pit road between the teams as they passed by each other. Was all that justified in your mind?
I don't know. I didn't see any of that. I know I got hit from behind, and it bent all the rear suspension and punctured my rear tire. So, you know, he wasn't alongside, so he wasn't in a position to pass.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
It has come down to this. 1 lap to go, and when we go green, it will be 4 laps. Call it 4 laps at $250,000 apiece. $1 million will go to one of these drivers. Paul Tracy out in front of Greg Moore, Jimmy Vasser, Alex Zanardi, Adrian Fernandez, Mauricio Gugelmin, and Christian Fittipaldi.
Barry on the radio to Paul Tracy. Barry Green says, come on, we need a perfect restart and then just 4 perfect laps.
Well, he's already restarted on the back straightaway.
The pace car is long gone, and Paul Tracy is hard on the gas with Greg Moore, Jimmy Vasser, Alex Zanardi behind him doing likewise. The field is ready to go green.
Yellow flag, yellow waving.
Yellow flag out for the flag. Where is Paul? Paul Tracy spun on the backside.
No way. Oh,
is this possible?
Oh my gosh, he tried so hard. He started coming out of turn 2. The tires must have been too cool. Unbelievable.
Here's a replay.
Now he's coming out turn 2, stands on the gas, and just turns it sideways and smacks it up against the fence and hands it.
Down in the pit lane, what were those words from Barry Green just before the pace car took off?
And Bob, you know what he just said now? He said, Paul, that just sums up our season.
Well, I would have to agree with Barry Green. What a bitter heartbreak for Paul Tracy and for that man, Barry Green, and his team. So much triumph and so much trouble. And so Paul Tracy will not win his first 500-mile race and $1 million here today. Back to Jan Bikas.
Well, Barry Green, what a tough break. I mean, did you ever think, I know you were telling him to get charged up, get a good restart, but I guess the tires were still cold?
Well, I mean, I obviously don't know what happened. It was all going to come down to the restart, and he drove such a perfect race all day, and just 4 laps to go, and I think he could have held him off. That close to $1 million, but I guess that just sums up our season. You know, he's had a rough season, but I tell you what, he's a hell of a racer. He'll be back really strong next year. We'll be back real strong next year. So
now, what are you going to do in a situation where you're not even sure? I mean, he's been banned from the first race of the season. How can you get him pumped up for a whole new season?
We'll be back next year. We'll be real strong. This kid is very, very good. Dario Fanchetti is very, very good. The team is excellent right now. We'll be back with a big punch next year.
Thanks, Barry.
Well, of course, the question is for a lot of people out there, how can you do that? Well, let me tell you, Paul just goes and he picked up too much throttle. We've seen a lot of greats do it over the year. Tom Sneva comes to mind. Guerrero, he just got it too much. The tires are a little cold. You got all that stagger in there, and he just turned them a little sideways. That's all she wrote.
To explain what the stagger does, the stagger, to help the car turn, you end up having the bigger right rear tire, and at slower speeds, it's more pronounced.
Paul Tracy would end the 1998 season with a best start of 4th place at Houston and Surfers Paradise and a best finish of 5th place at Motegi, Nazareth, and Mid-Ohio. He led 88 laps during the season and retired from 9 of 19 races, all of which were due to crashes. Tracy finished 13th in the 1998 standings with 61 points. Meanwhile, Dario Franchitti would win at Road America, Vancouver, and Houston and finish 3rd in points. Additionally, Tracy's unsafe driving at Surfers Paradise caused him to be banned from competing at the 1999 season opener at Homestead.